Hey everybody, it's time for Tech Talk Thursday. Woo! Come on, give us a round of applause. We need a little excitement to start, because that's how we start things, especially Tech Talk Thursdays. Today's Tech Talk Thursday, what your data really reveals. Dun, 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 dun. Mm-hmm. I'm going to turn it straight over to Neil. And don't forget, you can always put your questions in chat, and he will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. And take it away, Neil.
Well, hello, everybody. Happy Thursday to you, or whatever day, if you're watching it at a future time. Glad you're here. I'm very excited about this topic, and I get it that a lot of people aren't. And it's sort of like, it's like one step removed from being like the, program accountant or something like that. But here's why I'm excited about this topic, is because if you know this data that we're talking about, if you know this info, you're a long way towards working out how to plug the holes in your program. And I liken it to a bucket that has sat out, or your kids took and drummed and put a hole in it, and you fill it with water and you lift it up, and all of a sudden there's water going out all over the place. Usually when the water's in it, it's hard to see it, and that sort of thing. Where's the problem? Let's get it fixed, and so on. So I wanted to share with you some of what we use data-wise to help programs think this through. I come from a marketing world, and so I've thought about this stuff for a lot of years, and now applying that across to adult ed. So I'll launch in. As Jen said, if there's questions, share those, and we'll roll from there. Just want to make sure everybody's seeing the screen. Okay there. All right. Good. All right. Adult ed by the numbers, how to identify the holes in your program. Let's talk a little bit through that there. You know how it is. I was a teacher myself for a lot of years. I was a high school teacher, and the scenes you see in front of you here, these are the things that, if you've been a teacher in a classroom for any period of time, you've seen before, and maybe you've ignored because you just want to keep on cruising. Who knows what? But when people don't get it. That's a reality. But what do you do about it? That's the big question. How do you solve that? And it's easy when you've got everything sitting right in front of you. It's so much harder when it's not. So the question I want to pose to you is, what if we handled enrollment and understanding enrollment and growing your program's enrollment in the same way as you do learning? When you see somebody, I remember very distinctly, I look across my room, I would see the eyeballs of some people just sort of sink back in their head, and I'd know it was time to go back and reteach again. Looking at our program, we want to try to do the same thing and work out what's going on. What do we need to fix? Where's the problem? And a lot of that begins by gathering information with all of that. You need to find out where you lose students, and then you've got to do something about it. You've got to engage them. You've got to maybe come up with some innovation that you don't currently have in place. You've got to work out how you can speak their language. And with adult ed, you've got to be careful about that one, because it's not literally maybe the language they grew up speaking, but it's the language of their world today. Where are they with all of that? And most importantly, you just don't want to leave them behind. And nobody intends to do that. But what happens is life happens. All the things that are part of your program happen, and then all of a sudden, it's just the momentum of things that pull us away. All right, so I want to go through and if you've just jumped on, there should be a link in chat for you to be able to download a worksheet if you want to do that, or come back around Jen just reposted it again. But I'm going to go through these 7 numbers you need to be tracking in your program and talk about them a little bit. I'm going to give you an example, and then I'm going to sort of just come back around and summarize a little bit and sort of share with you a little bit about what I think are the big things to be doing. Now, let me just preface by saying this. If you're gathering all these numbers now, I will be impressed and very happy, but I don't expect that to be the case. And my guess is in some cases, you don't even know where to start on some of these numbers. So we'll talk through that as we go through. But I get asked by programs, and let's just say you asked me to take a look at your program and help identify where some of the holes are. Where are you, I'll use the term, leaking students, losing students right now? If you didn't have these numbers, it would be hard for me. It'd be gut feeling. It wouldn't be fact. And that's why I want to sort of bring this up. The ultimate goal for me out of this is you realize that maybe you need to start to do some tracking, and you'll start to keep some numbers going forward if you're not doing it already. And of course, for those programs that we work with, we're doing that in the background already along the way. It's part of what we do to help our clients with the work that we do for them. All right, so let's take a look at it here. The 7 numbers you need to be tracking. So number 1, I'm going to call it visits to your website. And I know for some programs, that's not how you're looking at that. I'll explain why. You could definitely track it as visits to your campus, but only if you're following through in the way I'm going to share with you on this here. The number 1 thing that I use for this is Google Analytics. It's the way I know how many people. So here's the model that I think makes the most sense with adult ed today, and it's based around staffing, and it's based around the world we live in. If you were to direct every person that comes to your campus physically to your website as a starting point for everything you do, if somebody calls your program on the phone, you were to direct them to your website. And if they were to do a search online or go through your Facebook page or something like that, the message would be, go to our website. Now, that's what I would recommend every program do. And I'll tell you why in a second. But I know that there are some of you who are saying, oh man, I don't want to send them there. And I've worked with programs just in recent months where that's been the issue, right? They're like, it was not reflecting us, and we're working on fixing that up. The reason I say that that's important is because it takes the pressure off of any staff members having to manage the rest of this information and the rest of this data. It puts it all on factual stuff that we can measure, and that's so important. And so when you have Google Analytics available to you, you know how many unique visitors you had to your website over X amount of time. If you're sending every inquiry to your website, I get it. You're going to lose some in the process. I get that 100%, but you'll have a number that you can start to track. And that's really important. There are other little tools you can use, but that's where I would start the ball rolling on that. What you're looking for is how many unique visitors each month come to your website. The unique, that's what you want. So how many different individuals come? That gives you a starting point. And I like to get an average for the past 6 months. That would be a good thing. At first, you're not going to know what's good and what's bad, because if you don't have the data, you don't have any way of knowing what success looks like. I'll give you some ideas as we get into this, but you got to get the ball rolling. So that's some big pieces right there. Number 1, you've got to work out how many visits to your website, how many of those initial inquiries you're getting. Okay, and then number two, you have to know how many inquiries are coming into your program. All right, so visit to a website, somebody who called in, somebody who showed up at the front desk. Okay, that's number one that I would think of, the first number. The second number is how many people have actually said, I am interested in your program. And now the big question is, how are you monitoring that? And when we started doing some work with adult ed programs, I sort of smiled to myself a little bit, because I'd go and I'd say, okay, show me all your inquiries. And what I would get would be a collection of spreadsheets held by many different people. I'd get sticky notes. I would get references to voicemail. There's a message on my voicemail. Somebody had a whole bunch of names scribbled on a notepad, and it was all over the place. And so it was very hard to manage because of that. But you need to know and have a central place to collect every name and the relevant contact information for those people. So what should you have? I think you should have first name, last name, email, and cell phone number. That's the basics of what you should have. And then I would say next would be like, what program are they interested in? Are they interested in ELL? Are they interested in HSC? Are they interested in some career training you might offer? But that's a key number right there that you want to be tracking. You want to know how many people have expressed an interest. And in our connectable system, what we do is we start programs off with a first step. And that is basically just to give us that basic information and the program they're interested in. Why? Because we know a percentage of them are going to drop off down the line, and we want to be able to market back to them. If you come back to me and say, Neil, we want to reach some new students, which we've had programs do in the last couple of weeks, we want to get some more students into our classes. Well, instead of me having to invent a way to contact students, more than likely there will be a good number in this category who are waiting and ready. They just need to be contacted again. They just need to be spoken to jump back into the mix. So inquiries into your program. Third number that you want to look at is how many start the enrollment process. So that looks like different things for different programs. I understand that. So visited. Number two number is expressed an interest. They're on a list somewhere that you're keeping. And number three is people who actually start through the process. Now, we have a digital process. Connectable is all about providing a quick and easy way for programs to not have to worry about this, but get students plugged in into the enrollment process. And so we have a digital process, and we can tell when they've created an account in our system. And as a result, we know that number. We know exactly what that number looks like. We know how many are ELL, how many are HSE, and how many are career training. So we can help a program to look at that. But if you don't have a system like that, how can you recognize what that is? Because it may be that you have quite a few people showing interest, but then nobody or a much lesser number coming in for the enrollment process or starting the enrollment process, however that looks like. And so if you don't know the difference between those two numbers, you don't know what to do next on that side of things. Yep, Connectable can make that easy for you. Again, it's not something you have to worry about tracking because we track that for you. Number four, how many make an orientation appointment? And for most programs, that looks like coming in to test, or for some programs, it's an interview and that sort of thing. So they've gone through some initial information. They've learned about the program. They understand who you are and what you're about. And now they are coming in to make the first real step into your program. And what we find on average in our data that we have in Connectable, Most programs in the ELL and HSC are getting about 3 out of every 4 students who start in the enrollment process to make an appointment, which is a pretty good number. And for the 25% that don't do that, we have very quick mechanisms where we can go right back to them and message them to come back in. And we usually find within about 24 hours, about 30 to 50% of them have gone through and completed it. And so what you're doing very quickly is plugging a hole. So are they making the orientation appointments? Again, yes, we can make that easy for you. Number 5, how many show up for the actual orientation appointments and that sort of thing, right? So that's the next step. How many actually are showing up? People make appointments and don't show up. I am guessing if I was standing in a room of people I could see, I could take a show of hands and probably every hand would go up to say, yep, we have that in our program. People say they're coming and they don't show up. And that is life. I get it. We're working on some systems that would allow students to reset appointments on their end and some different things like that. But it is a reality of life. You're going to have a drop-off. And some of it's because life happens. Some of it's because of work, kids, school, that sort of thing. But guess what? Some of it is because they got freaked out. You said the word test, and in the back of their mind, they felt the experience of being in high school before, or maybe heard the voice of a parent or a sibling say, well, we're never good at tests, so how do you think you're going to do well at this? And so on. And so one of the things we really try to strive to do is to help educate the students in that enrollment process so that they know that this is not a pass-fail experience. This is so we know where you are, so we can help you to get where you want to go. And that's an important messaging that needs to come in. But we need to know who they are. And so we help programs use Google Sheets for orientation appointment tracking. And we can take those names of the students who booked the time but never showed up and send messages back out to them, or have the staff call them and set a new appointment with them so that they can come in and finish that orientation process. That's a really key part of it. And yeah, test anxiety is very real. And I as we were looking at data, you know, we were wondering why this happens. And I think talking to students and just hearing what teachers are saying, we think the number one reason is that they just get scared of the test part of it. And the whole process, you know, for a lot of adults to come back to school is hard. And, you know, I need to learn English, but boy, it's going to take a lot of work. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. Our realities on that. So how many actually show up is an important thing. And then the last thing that you'll look at in this step of the process is, so how many show up after the test and start attending classes now? How many actually are attending in all of that? And if you look at it, the number that I'm always interested in is what percentage of people who said they were interested in your program, so number 2 in these steps, actually showed up in class. That's a really good measure of where you are in your processes to sort of arrive at. How many actually show up at that last step and now are in classes? And of course, ultimately, the ultimate number takes a little bit longer to get there for most programs, especially if they're not doing a boot camp type of a process. But how many actually get their HSC or move from ELL to HSC, or get that career training certification and that sort of thing? What percentage of the students who come in actually get that final product? That would be another number to put in the mix there. Good communication is the key here. We've seen some great ideas that teachers have of how to work with their prospective students and communicate with them, and that programs have to try to help them to actually come in and show up on that side of things. And then, of course, number 7 on this, another good number to be looking at is how many stop attending class before a post-test is given. That's an important number as well to look at and to work out what that number is. And then do they exit before you can get them to come back? So having some sort of a system, a notification, so that people are looking at that and monitoring it. Inside our connectable system, we have a color-coded system for attendance to see when somebody's in the red, which, when the yellow actually is where we have the problems, meaning that they're on the way out. They haven't attended in more than 60 days. And so with potential to lose them. Knowing that is a great resource to have to be able to then go back and just visit with them, call them, talk to them, and see if you can get some reasons why that might be happening. Okay, so that's the 7 of the numbers that we're looking at, and I get it. For some of you, especially for smaller programs and that might be too many numbers to be tracking, too many different pieces there. So if you had to simplify it, I'd want to know how many inquiries you get, how many people show up for make up test appointments, how many show up for class, and then how many are you graduating. Those numbers right there would be a really good set of numbers, a simplified set of numbers that you could be looking at to determine what's going on. Because the goal here, and that's what I really want you to think about, is it's not about the numbers per se. The goal is actually that you get to a place to where you can look and you can see, man, why are we getting such a drop off at this stage? Let's focus on that stage and let's come up with a strategy to improve that. And then as time goes on, you can revisit the numbers and see if you've made improvement on that. And then if you have, you can focus on another area and make improvement on that and continually be looking at how you can make those steps better. And I'll be certainly happy to talk through some of the things we potentially, ideas from anybody who's attending here in a little bit on improving in those different areas. All right, so let's just see it in action. This is what I do. I sit down, I go through, I collect all the numbers up, and then I put something like this together. So here's sort of like how I would do it. I just have a little Word doc that I put everything on, and then I record the numbers. So these aren't real numbers. These are based loosely on one that I did for one of our clients recently, but it gives you an idea. So in this scenario, they had 2,521 visitors to the website. That led to 1,772 people completing a form, a very short form indicating they were interested in either ELL or HSC or career training opportunity. That led to 1,252 people starting the enrollment process, which for us is creating an account in our system. So we know that number. 901 of them made an appointment after that was all said and done. And then 251 actually showed up for that appointment, and 129 showed up in class. So if I'm looking at the numbers right there, and I actually didn't calculate this one, so I'm going to pop my calculator up. The number that if I'm picking one number, I'm saying that 129 out of 1,772, we took the first step, which is 7.27% of the inquiries. 7.2% of that number actually have come into class. So that would be a good starting point to measure, to go, okay, right now we're getting 7% of our inquiries to show up in class. How do we improve that? And these are all the steps along the way that you can be analyzing to determine improvement. Now, I broke it down one more step to show percentages, because that's what I like to do as well with that. So what does this represent? This represents 70% of the people who visited the site inquired about joining the program. I love that number. I think that's a very good number. It's probably high compared to, some programs, but that's relative. I want to say it's relative because it's based on what you experience over time. So over time, once you're tracking, you'll be able to know what that number should look like. And if you see sharp drops or increases, then it's time to investigate why. But that would be an excellent number. I think anything over 50% of people who visit and actually say, I want to take the next step is great. And we've had some that are higher than 70% as well. So the next number is how many actually started into the enrollment process. So they didn't just say I'm interested, but they said I'm ready to take the next step. So in this example, it's 71%, which is another great number. We think 3 out of every 4 is what we see as average for ELL and HSE especially. Career training is a little different because career training for most programs is a lot more intense, a lot more involved. And we find students, once they find out more about it, it doesn't fit their schedule or their life at that point to commit in that way that they initially thought. But we find 3 out of 4 is about where you should be at this next step. Step number 3 there. So 75% would be normal for starting enrollment and that sort of thing. Then in this example, a good number, 72% of that number completed and made an appointment. Again, it's about the same, 3 out of every 4. That's the minimum goal that we're striving for, is to try to get 3 out of every 4. If we can do better than that, we're excited. If we're not doing as well as that, it's probably an indicator of a problem that has to be fixed up on that side of things. Then in this scenario here, and I think this is wrong because I think I changed this and I did not change my numbers. 251, sorry, yes, divided by 901. So this number here should actually be not 65%, it should be 28%. So 28% showed up for their appointment. 72% made an appointment, only 28% showed up. Okay, so that's an alarm bell for me. Boom, boom, boom. Almost 3 out of every 4 didn't show up. So that would be a real problem one. So if I was looking at the numbers right now, I'd say that's where you need to focus on. Somehow you're losing students, if these were your numbers, from when they make an appointment to when the actual time comes for them to show up. In this scenario, that's where the hole in your bucket is. And that's where you would dive in to look at, okay, what could we do to fix that, and so on. And so we can come back and talk about that in a minute. And then of that number, it's not 76%, 129 divided by 251, it's about 51%, or about half, a little over half showing up into classes. I'd say that's low as well. I'd want that to be higher. And those 65 and 76 are wrong. I copied numbers over and then I forgot to change them again. That probably should be a little higher, and that probably tells me you're getting some test anxiety, or people are getting in the head of those prospective students. And so that's when it'll be a great time for somebody to reach out one-on-one and talk to the student and say, hey, let's I'd love to know why you haven't showed up. You did all the hard work up to this point. You've gone through a ton of stuff. We'd love to see you in class. Let me help you. You can be successful. These sorts of conversations and these sorts of languages and that sort of stuff. So that's how I look at that. And that's why I look at it this way, because I can quickly tell. And like I said, if you had to boil it down, I'd boil it down to have your number for number 2, have your number for number 4, and have your number for number 6. 2, 4, 6. If you've got those 3, you've got a good starting point to evaluate what's going on. And then if those numbers are looking good, I'd want to know number 1. How many people are actually showing up in your world, first and foremost? That's the biggest thing. Because if that number is really high and then your program inquiries is low, the problem is something in your initial messaging is off, and you need to evaluate that initial messaging so that it can focus better on that side. So hopefully I didn't put too many of you to sleep in my run through on all that there, and hopefully you catch the vision of where that heads, because that is the important numbers for us to look at in all of that. I think the biggie that we need to think about next is just sort of boiling it down. I'm going to talk about these keys to success, and I'll open up to some questions and maybe look at some other aspects that we can discuss here. Okay, so if you want to really work out what's not growing your program right now, number one, you have to know your numbers. You got to know your numbers. So using the strategies that I just gave you there, and again, if you joined late or watching this later, there should be a link in the chat if you're on live, or later on underneath this for a little worksheet where you can get this information and sort of fill it in as you go there. Number two, collect every name. We know that that's being asked for right now anyway, but just get every name in your books so that you can go back and reach out to people. I would add them to some sort of text messaging. And then whenever you need to push go on getting some new info, then you can very quickly do that and drive that agenda forward. Then I would have a follow-up process. What does that look like? Is that somebody with some help of some technology? What does that look like in terms of reaching back out to those who have fallen through the cracks and getting them involved again? We find it is as simple as sending a text message to that particular group. A text message is sometimes all it takes, well worded, inviting them back into the process. And that's what will make a difference right there. And you always have to give people the option to opt out. So, if you're text messaging from your phone, or if you're sending emails from your personal email account, you're not allowing people to have the right to opt out without you knowing. And that's, there's spam laws against that. And people feel embarrassed sometimes. I've been in some text message groups where I'm like, oh, I don't want to tell him that I don't want to get his messages anymore. So guess what I do? I just put up with it for a long time. And you may be the same, and you're like, oh, and I would hate for students to feel, get upset every time you're messaging them because they don't have a nice, easy way to get out. And that's where using the word stop in the text message systems and unsubscribes from email systems are important, because they give people the ability to say, thank you, I'm good at this point. And that's an important part of the process. Yeah, so that's really it. That's what I wanted to share. If you need some help personally and want to talk through some of this, obviously the first question, the first question I'm going to ask you now, don't you? Show me your numbers. So if you don't have any numbers, but if you do need to reach out and want to chat, there's my contact information, and you can chat with us about what may be going on in your world there. So that's a very quick run through. I get it. But I just thought that might be helpful as we talked about different things this month, and made that a focal point on what we can do to help you through your processes. So
I think you had some great reveals. Whenever you think about just the ones that don't show up, and everyone automatically assumes, oh, it was this, or maybe it was this, or, oh, they just chickened out. But there is so many options there that it could be and if just tracking those alone, knowing how many that is, can help you determine, and what other questions you could ask, and how you can build relationships with students once they're there. That's the one big reveal I got out of it. How about the rest of you? What stuck out to you? Anybody? Janet, Kathy, Amy, Matt? Calling them out. You can, all you need to do is just unmute yourself, because I see Amy unmuted herself. Amy,
Yeah, I thought this is great. I think having the steps and also kind of keeping those numbers in front of us will make a difference and be able to look at, and then we can go to staff and do, some brainstorming together after we have the numbers that's showing us what's happening. Then let's get together and get all staff involved and figuring out what are things that we can change so that it makes a difference and make our numbers be where we want them to be.
absolutely. The other thing that whenever it comes to that difference of the number of people that go on the website and the number of the people that fill out that form, and then that very bottom number, it's like, what was wrong with that initial messaging? What did we not convey that they thought they were getting something else whenever, this is what we were delivering? I think that could be a big factor in programs like the boot camps and the HSEs in a hurry.
Yeah.
Well, and I think maybe even I was just thinking about this, having a system in place where you can revisit with people, maybe just asking a couple questions, in a survey, or while people are talking to them and recording it on a spreadsheet. But why didn't you come back?
Right.
Actually finding out the why, and then working out how you can address them in some form or another, so that future students wouldn't get caught by that as well. I think that could be huge.
Yeah, so that's what I just had the other day. I was talking to one of the staff members, and she has this spreadsheet she's keeping of all the people that didn't finish registration and actually make their appointment. And I said, what are you doing with that list? And she's like, but it's just there. And I said, wouldn't you see that that's the people we should maybe be reaching out to and finding out why they didn't finish? And she's like, oh, well, yeah, I guess so. I said, so we've kind of brainstormed a little bit there. And I said, let's do a 3 strike. Let's text them. Let's text all of them 3 times and see who and give them the opt-out option, but see who that we can get to come back from contacting them. And then after 3 times, if they've still not engaged with us or moved on, then you move on and add them to another sheet that maybe in 3 months we'll come back to that list. Yeah. So kind of making your plan of when you will contact them, obviously right away is best, because strike while the iron's hot, but yet life happens. So maybe we need to give them some grace, and we'll check back in with them in 3 to 6 months and see if now is the right time for them to start. So I think putting it into, making that plan strategically of what you're going to do with those people that haven't followed through will make a difference.
Absolutely.
Yep, I agree.
A question that came in, Neil, is any advice on the email addresses and the phone numbers that go away, that disappear, that are no longer attached to the person? Is there anything else?
I mean, people change phone numbers. That happens on a regular basis, and that one's a hard one to fix up. There's not a lot you can do about it on your end, except to have a system where you can be updating. Once you hear about it, a student's changed phone number, you can update it centrally so that that's in place. It's very hard at that point to do that. Here's one thing I will say. It's probably not the direct question, but it comes to mind immediately. Email is okay. The average open rates on email are probably 10 to 15%. And that's from people who actually said they wanted an email from you. So for every 100, that's not very many. Now, the open rates on text messages are about 95% within the first 5 minutes of it being received. That doesn't mean they won't opt out and things like that, but there's a greater chance that they'll see it, and it's because it's quick, it's short, and all of that. So my biggest advice is focus on the phone number primarily, and focus on whatever you can do to keep those as up to date, that list of phone numbers as up to date as possible, so that you've always got as many good numbers as you possibly can have to communicate with students or prospective students.
It actually makes me think of your doctor's appointment. What questions do you get at the doctor's office every single time you come in?
Absolutely.
Has there been any change to your contact information? Has there been any change to your medicines? So why not ask your students every single time they visit, is there any change to your information?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Of course, now it's have you had the COVID test in the last 2
Yeah, well, there's that question.
the new ones that got thrown in there.
I also heard of a program that they set each student that in their program, they set up a actual email address for them. And so because they used the Google Suite, they set up a Gmail for that student, and made sure that that was the Gmail account that they utilized for all of their schoolwork and everything, which was another good tip. So
we've had that conversation with programs as well, and the challenge with that is just some people are just not used to looking at their email. They're horrible with it, and so we've primarily made a shift with all of the marketing we do for programs to text messaging, because it is more than likely to be effective than anything else. And the number one reason is because we see it when we send out text messages. We see the results coming back in quickly. We do a automated e-follow-up process that you have to do every quarters after students have exited and that sort of thing. And I've set it to where it goes out 3 times, and when that text message goes out, you see people respond every time. And even though they got 2 more, the timing was right. So now is the time that they responded and that sort of thing. And so that's the learning of it, is just looking at it and going, okay, this is what's effective for us. And it may look different, because text messaging is not good if you do it at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Please don't text me at 2 o'clock in the morning.
If you do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. But if you do it at the right time, in the right way, we're careful on your frequency and things like that, people will resonate. Just like anything, you could stick something in the mail to people, but that's going to cost you a lot. But here's the one thing I'll tell programs: if you have a neighborhood that real well has a good potential to have students in it, I would try a mail approach. There is something called I always forget the name of it. I'm looking it up now. The U.S. Postal Service has I think it's every door direct mail. I'm going to put a URL in the chat. This is a service that the post office offers where you can mail a postcard, and by that I mean you could have a huge postcard out to every residence or business in a delivery route, a mail delivery route. So if around your school you have a neighborhood that could be a good target, it's like pennies compared to direct, like mailing to a known name and an address, because you don't need any names or anything, and you just design a message to go out, a postcard, a couple other little things like that, and for very, very low cost. And they'll even tell you up front exactly how much that is. They'll tell you there are 327 homes in this route, and it will cost you this much to mail to them. And then boom, you could do that. And then I would send them to my website as a next step, and maybe even a unique page for that, so I could track the response rate. Because again, I've seen a lot of people do postcard mailings, but they don't know if they're effective because they don't know who actually took the next step with it. So instead of sending them to your homepage, send them to, your URL / postcard one, and then you would know exactly when you look at your analytics how many people did that. These are the sorts of little things you can be tweaking with a program to try to work out what works. And so maybe you work out, we do that 3 or 4 times a year. That gets us new names on our number 2 on the list, the interest list, that we can then market to as well.
Neil, that just made me remember in the past when I worked with United Way, I remember that we were trying to also engage a targeted audience, and we actually contacted our city and asked if in the utility bills, the water bills, and that if they would put something in there, and it was for free. So they just added it, and they also populated it again to neighborhoods we wanted to reach. And then that flyer went in their utility bills. Now, I don't know how many people have switched to receiving, utility bills via electronically versus paper anymore, but I know we had really great success with that as well.
I love it. Now see, and so let me throw that back around. Which one of those steps is that going to help more than anything?
Visitors to your website.
Yeah, that's number one. That's to get, if you're stalled and you're looking and you're going and you're seeing like, man, we're getting nobody knows we exist essentially. Well, you have to come up with a campaign to help people know you exist. And what would be the top 3 ways that your target students that you would like to be in front of, where do they hang out? What do they look at? What do they see? What do they read? What are they listening to, where you could have a message that goes out there? And then you never know, within your community, there's probably an organization that would be willing to be a sponsor for that or something like that to try to help make it a reality for you.
Yep.
But that's great for number 1, to get more visitors to the website so that you can get more inquiries and go down the line. But to me, there's nothing worse from any, a business, marketing, schools, or anyone that gets a ton of people coming to their website expressing interest, but very few sales, or students in class, right? That's horrible. And that can be fixed along the way. You just have to work out where the hole is.
I love the idea of having a unique web page depending on what mechanism you're advertising, so that you can truly find out if that is worth your time.
Yeah, like
because
people get billboards, right? So programs get billboards, and very rarely do they ever know if the billboard did one little thing for them. They either should have a unique phone number that they can track every call comes from, or a unique URL on that billboard. And I get it. It's hard. You're cruising down, like in Indy here, if you're cruising around 465 and you see a billboard, here's the funniest part of that. Some people think billboards are perfect places for QR codes.
I was going to say that.
I would beg to differ, because nobody's slowing on, turn around.
I need a picture of that.
Yeah, I didn't get that. So it has to be a short and clear URL that redirects to a unique page, so you can say, wow, the only place we had that was on our billboard, and we got X visitors to our website because of that. We know that that's worth it, or it's not worth it as a result. And because I had a newspaper years ago, and my advertisers would tell me it was useless. And I would say, why? And they say, because nobody came in because of it. And I would say, did you ask them? Oh yeah. And then, but people would say, when they were asked how they hear about you, they would say, we heard you on the radio. And they'd be like, we don't advertise on the radio. Because you see, people don't remember where they hear stuff because they're so bombarded with things. But in this scenario, you can track it digitally. You know exactly what it did or did not do for you. So when you come back and say, want to renew, you can either say, you bet, this is the best thing since sliced bread, or you can say with great assurance, this was useless, no thank you.
You know, I just went through that. We did a 2-month trial. We got a discount rate for the radio stations, and they were, you know, they did so many spots and everything. And I just had my data person pull. I said, how many people on the registration, you know, that they listened, they found us on from the radio, and it was like 2. And it's like, okay, well, that wasn't a good spending of money, but now that you're saying that, maybe it was, and they just didn't remember. So they just said, I don't know, somebody told me.
Or in, you know, like Amy, I know in your case, by the time they get to that question, they've answered like, you know, 50 before, and they might just be ready to be done. So the placement in that case may not be the best to get all of the answers. I would take it out of people's hands. On a lot of these things, you want to take it out of their hands. You want to put it in your own hands to control what happens next.
Good stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, we have a little bit of Region 4 going on here. I'm not sure where Matt's from, but hi, Kathy and Janet.
Matt,
I'm in Fort Wayne.
Yeah, up in Fort Wayne.
So not far. You could be in Region 4.
What region is Fort Wayne? Is that?
I think it's 3, if I remember right.
Yeah.
I'm on the marketing side of things, so that part I'm not 100% on.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, though. I think it's 3. So
are there any other questions for Neil? Any other big reveals? Does everybody make the connections that whenever it comes to the numbers, they all reveal something? And so if you can't make that connection, then perhaps your entire team can. The more minds you get together on your numbers, the more reveals you're going to have. And that includes adding the connectable team to yours. So what are you going to do with this information next? Well, first, you can go ahead to the chat. You can go to those 3 dots and you can right click and you can save the chat right to your computer, so you can have that all the quick links that I just gave you and the link directly to the Tech Talk. We also, it will be up shortly on the Tech Talk page. Yes, on the Tech Talk page. That's September's issue. We didn't have one in October due to conference, I think it was conference brain,
post-conference something we don't know what it was, but it was something like that. So you'll find the link to watch this again and the download available on the Tech Talk page. Until next time, November 4th. It'll be November 4th. Is that right? Yes, no,
that's right.
Today.
That's right. December. Gosh, duh. I had the calendar on the wrong. December 2nd. December 2nd will be our next Tech Talk. If you have a suggestion on what technology questions that you want answered, then go ahead and send it to I love the comment just now. Send it in the chat. And yes, Neil for president. Yay.
You know what? I'm not allowed to be president.
Can we ask Amy that question?
I'm sure Amy would say denied.
Yes. Luckily for everybody, I'm ineligible. So.
Any other closing thoughts, Neil?
No, I just, again, this isn't designed to overwhelm. It's designed to get you to take a step back and think, what are we tracking? And maybe tracking just a few more numbers will give you a great resource. And, you know, the good old take names. Those 2 things. Right
names. There. Yes. Yeah. Track everyone that you come in contact with, because at some point in time, they want to be contacted. It's just maybe it wasn't the right time for them then. And I think that's a big reveal as well.
Yeah.
So ta-ta for now. Until next time.
Everybody.